say new release speedrun, but we've got over 80 books this year, so I'll be as fast as I can. I try to introduce all the books that we had at the BC Teacher Librarian Conference in October, but well, all of the ones that my local library has in stock by this time of year anyways. So shout out to Vancouver Island Regional Library. They did a really amazing job. This is most of them. I'm going to try to give like a couple words, a vibe check to as many as possible, as quick as possible. Just a quick refresher on who we are, why I'm doing this. The Children's Writers and Illustrators of BC, CWILL BC, like the pen, is the professional society for authors and illustrators of books for 0 to 18 in our province, and Children's Literacy Society in general. And so we represent around 160 publishing professionals across the province, storytellers across the province, and they're doing amazing work. I'm going to show you all about it in a minute. I'll have some resources for how you can look at this stuff on your own, at your own pace. If this video runs super long, which in previous years, I say speed run, it goes a while. So I'm going to dive right in. Hopefully this is helpful for you. I'm going to start with picture books. We're going to go to nonfiction, which ranges from picture books up into some longer stuff. We're going to go into graphic novels and then into not graphic novels from middle grade and YA. So starting with picture books, I thought this was a super fun, super cute one. I definitely read it to my niece who is in potty training and my nephews who really got a chuckle out of it, Diaper Kid. The illustrator, Haley Lowe, is based in BC, and a pretty cute take, pretty silly take on potty training. I've been hearing that there are some littles making it into the school system who are still in this phase, so teachers may also get a kick out of this as well as parents. 6 Little Sticks by humorous author, often has a lot of wordplay, Tiffany Stone, based in BC, and illustrator Ruth Hengeveld. This is a counting book. It's also a search and find book. I was actually quite surprised. I read it to my just turned 7-year-old nephew, and he had a great time finding all the bugs. So it does actually extend up into elementary quite well. You get to search for the stick bugs, which are in hiding as they go along through counting 6 down to 0 and then back up. And there's a little bit of a fact sheet at the end about bugs and their characteristics. Quite a fun one. This, one of my favorites this year, No Huddles for Heloise. Illustrator Uyana Lugo is BC based, written by Deborah Kerbel. And this gets into some sensory processing disorder stuff, some maybe autism, neurodivergent stuff. The penguin, Heloise, she is not a big fan of being touched, being held around, which is a protective mechanism for penguins. But her community is supportive, and so they find other ways to be protective without violating her boundaries and preferences. So I really appreciated that this book exists. First of all, it's really cute, it's really well done, and I love that this exists now. I really wish it had existed when I was a kid. So strong recommend for that one. Adorable, fun, also really useful. Lucky Dog Comes Home, written by John Spray. Scott Ritchie, of course, is a Canadian illustrator, BC-based illustrator, hugely prolific. I'm gonna have to back up a little because it's pretty wide for the camera. This is actually about a post-war story, so a little bit of historical. I was actually surprised in schools how much circulation there is after Remembrance Day. So their kids are really interested to read more stories that are historical when there is something going on that makes them interested. So it's about a mailman or a soldier who comes back and he gets a job as a mailman, and the dogs in the community kind of help him with his grief and his reintegration into society. So kind of a heartwarming, not too difficult for early ages, just touches on a few things that will be age appropriate for them. A very Linda Bailey book. She's one of my favorite authors. I love reading her. I get every single book of hers to read to my nieces and nephews, and I often do them for read alouds in schools as well, because they're unfailingly hilarious. They're perfect in terms of their language, their imagery, their ideas for kids. Lena the chicken, but really a dinosaur. So even though chickens are what chickens are, Lena is convinced that she's a dinosaur. She harkens back to her ancient ancestral memories of being a dinosaur to protect her flock and unlock her fierce protective instincts, and it just goes hilariously. So really, really fun one, really silly, and there are some good dinosaur facts and bird facts in here as well for kids who enjoy that. High recommend. There's also some little fun in terms of the construction with the cutout there. And dinosaur bones. And kids love making the sound effects. Bella and Bean, written by Sandra Bradley. That's another Udiana Lugo illustration. This is another great one to read. Bella and Bean, Bella has vision. Bean does not at the beginning. So Bella, she wants to turn their swimming hole, which is very muddy, into a spa. And so she helps Bean envision a future where they don't just grow big, they grow towards their dreams. And they have to enlist helpers. The whole community has to get involved in their own ways, using their own skills to bring her dream to reality. And I really like the way that it shows kids not only can you dream for more, you can aspire to more, but it takes a lot of work, it takes some false starts, and it takes enlisting help, and there's effort and multiple steps involved. So really good learnings, but a charming story, not just kind of hitting you over the head with what you have to do. It's beautifully done all around. You Can't Tame a Tiger, written by, actually, I think one of our newest members now, Stephanie Ellen. And illustrated by Julian Chung. So this is another really kind of cute, funny one with a bit of a message behind it. This tiger, as you can see, is white. He does not have orange and black stripes. And this little person is quite concerned about the fact that he's a non-conforming tiger. He doesn't look the way that other tigers work. And so he tries to amend the way that the tiger looks, and the tiger is not having it. The tiger is perfectly confident in his tigerness and helps little boy in the end understand that the tiger's just fine the way that he is. So quite funny, quite cute, and great messages underneath. This was another one of my favorites this year. I believe it was Cynthia Mackey, a Vancouver Island, BC author. I think it was her debut. And as you can see, the illustrations by Vicky Sung are absolutely gorgeous, just absurdly beautiful. You don't see this level of detail, this level of intricacy, and it's just imaginative and lush, and kind of harkens back to like maybe a century or more the way that they used to do illustration and children's picture books. And the narrative itself is about how we should be calm and gentle and quiet around bees. We don't want to startle them. But the language is poetic and beautiful and lush, and so are the illustrations. And I love that picture books like this exist, because we've had a bit of a trend towards everything being shorter and simpler, because of course we are in something of a literacy crisis. And while there's a reason for those trends in books for children, this is a really, really great resource, as well as an absolutely gorgeous and enjoyable book in developing language, in developing ideas and creativity and imagery. And when I teach young writers, when they get a little bit older, grade 3, grade 4, grade 6, grade 8, it really helps when they've been exposed to work like this, that they have language and concepts and creativity, and their imaginations are opening up and their skills are being developed. So have both. Give them books that they can start reading and developing those simple language skills, but also expose them to more than they currently are able to do. This one, another cute concept-based one, My Path by Jana Curl, Vancouver Island author and illustrator. She did both on this. And there's a little bit of a cute feature in this book. The snail's path has a bit of a shimmer to it, like the way that they do in real life. And that goes throughout the book, where the snail's just kind of making his own way through the world. And there's some ups and downs and uniquenesses to that, but he's always, they are always very confident in their own way. It's kind of a nice, gentle narrative through that. Another fantastic Linda Bailey book. She's really been rocking it lately with the releases. I can't remember if it was this year or last year that we had Dinosaurs versus Princesses, or Princesses versus Dinosaurs, I think it was, by Linda Bailey. And that one I've read it so many times that I got it for my niece for her birthday. It has a fantastic twist. It is a favorite read aloud. This is another favorite read aloud. I've read it so many times, so I'm going to have to get it soon for them. The Great Dinosaur Sleepover, illustrated by the famous and accomplished Joe Bloom, the great animator, of course. And so a little boy is excited to have a dinosaur sleepover, a dinosaur themed sleepover. Unfortunately, his friends can't make it, and some different friends show up instead. So cute, heartwarming, funny, and a little twist about maybe those friends in the neighborhood that you're not quite sure you want to be friends with, and how they can turn out to be better ones than you expect. So very charming. And dinosaurs are great with little kids. I haven't met, I don't know, between the ages of about 2 or 3 to 7 or 8 that doesn't love them. Another Vancouver illustrator, Kari Rust, and story by Anna Humphrey. At the Rescue Cat Cafe, we've got some good cat books coming this year. In fact, multiple, I think, rescue cats. And so this one is just a really charming narrative. There's this young volunteer at a rescue cat place, in this case, a cat cafe. And there's a little narrative that follows each of these multiple cats, where they came from, what their uniquenesses are, the uniqueness of the people that take them home, in this very charming language, these really whimsical, charming images. And at the end, there's kind of a nice wrap up in a way that kids will connect with at different levels. Some of them will have fun with a bit of a search and find element to it. Some of them may just really ask you for a cat at the end, so be prepared for that. I know my niece is already gunning for it. A little bit of a different one here, A Pond, a Poet, and 3 Pests by the very accomplished and prolific Caroline Adderson, with illustrations by Lauren Tamaki. And this is based on the famous Japanese poet Basho. So he is quite famous for this haiku, and the story has all of these different, he's taking a walk, and there's different creatures around the pond who know that he's famous, a great writer, and they're trying to impress him and catch his attention so that they can be immortalized in his work. But inspiration is not that easy to garner. And so the story kind of goes through this. It's quite artistic, on creativity, thoughts about fame and maybe getting attention. And so it's quite an interesting one. It might be quite an interesting one to look at for some older grades in terms of a read aloud when you're trying to talk about literature and creativity and art and some things like that to consider. We've got one by Fraser Valley-based author Stacy, illustrated by Fraser Valley-based author Stacy Chomiak, and illustrator Stacy Chomiak with author Taylor Ranjan. Rainbow Boy and the Pride Parade, and this is a sequel to an earlier Rainbow Boy book. In this case, of course, he goes to the Pride Parade, meets lots of very vibrant people there. So representation, of course, Stacy Chomiak is known for. In some cases, she's doing author-illustrator work, which is why I was tripping over it there, but in this case, she's the illustrator. And she does have some more work upcoming this in 2026, so keep an eye out for that. Another BC-based illustrator, we did have one earlier by Scott Ritchie, and this is, I believe, 2 out of 3 with him. So King of the Dump, written by Tim Wynne-Jones, and this one's talking about waste and circular economy through a little narrative of a boy gathering things at his home, taking them, seeing where they go, and in one case having a little bit of trouble letting go of something that needs to go on to a new home. And so it has a little bit of a teaching narrative. I didn't quite classify it in the nonfiction picture books because it does have a frame narrative around it, but there's quite a lot to learn in this one. And of course, charming, typical Scott Ritchie artwork. Jamie Chigot, always beautiful, fun, whimsical work that she's putting out, and this year's is no different. The Bigfoot Field Guide to Campers and Other Mysterious Creatures. We've had a bit of a run of Bigfoot-themed work lately. There was an excellent one last year as well by an Indigenous author, Lula put out the Bigfoot book about berry picking. But this one has a little bit more humor to it. We've got a Bigfoot who is not too sure, you can see him hiding there behind the tree, about all of these young campers in his woods. He's heard dangerous, concerning things about them, and so he maybe has an encounter that's a little bit less concerning than he's had in the past. But there's some very cute, very funny language, and it gets into playing with concepts of misunderstanding or perceptions, and it reverses the idea of the Bigfoot being the legend and having misperceptions about them. Turns people into the terrifying creatures, which is perhaps an advanced concept, but one that should be introduced. I misspoke. This is actually number 3 of 4 for Scott Ritchie. So he illustrated RJ and the Ticking Clock, and the author is Ian Duncan. This is, I think, now our second book where there are 2 dads. The first, of course, was Rainbow Boy. RJ is making his Father Day cards, and the ticking clock is of concern because, of course, since he has 2 dads, he needs to make 2 cards, and he has only the same amount of time as everyone else making 1 card. Thankfully, spoiler alert, his classmates pulled together and helped get him a little more time. So, bit of a heartwarming ending and some representation as well in that one. Nancy Hundel brings us kind of a different type of representation with illustrations by Angela Poon, based on a family story. So this is a mom who's a trucker, and the little girl goes in the cab with her. So that's their unique family experience. And it's kind of a gentle story about what that life is like, which is kind of a nice way to bring all different stories, people's experiences to life, and also put some representation into different class experiences as well. Earlier we had Eloise, and this is yet another book in the Hugs Are Not For Everybody theme. So a little bit more explicit with the title. This one, there's a birthday, and the birthday girl is quite fond of doing hugs, but not everybody is on board, so they come up with other ways to celebrate and show their enthusiasm. So some open modeling on that front. Useful resource, may also resonate with some kids in particular, and the ones that it doesn't may need the coaching. So excellent, and as you can see, lots of different types of representation in this one as well. So that's, I believe this is now the 3rd illustration by Udiana Lugo, and the story by Ella Russell. This one we're very excited to introduce, but also it's a little bit sad. It was co-written by Norma Charles and Andrea Charles. Norma Charles is a long-standing author with Quill, and she did pass earlier this year. So we lost her, and we're very excited to share her legacy. She has many wonderful works which have deeply engaged with social justice over the years, and this will be, I believe, her last, certainly right until the end. She was releasing and doing school visits. Co-written with her daughter, and about an experience that her grandson had, unfortunately engaging with racism in BC schools. And so it was very close to her heart to work with her daughter to put out this story about his experience, and to help other children like him. So engaging with bullies in schools, other kids in schools, doing race-based bullying, calling him the N-word in class, and how he's processing with that, and having hope for better experiences with illustration by Ken Ditley. So we hope that that's a great resource for BC schools and beyond. And while we're very sad to have lost Norma Charles and the incredible impact that she had on the BC children's publishing community and well beyond, yeah, we hope that her work continues to live on, and she has many other books, picture books, middle grade and up over the years. Another very heartfelt, meaningful book that came out this year, A Stronger Home. Co-writers Katrina Chen and Elaine Su, with illustrations by Delphi Cote-Lacroix. And Katrina Chen, you may have seen, this was very well covered in BC-based news and beyond, based on experiences and stories of family violence. And so, of course, in an age-appropriate way, it's communicated a little bit more gently, a little bit more poetically, as the person contributing that violence interpreted as a storm. So this mother and child, they have to change where they're living, go sort of from safe house to safe house in order to get away from this storm. And it can open up those conversations and reflect those experiences for children who may have experienced that, and for children who haven't, to understand that they're all different experiences. Very beautiful book from my neck of the woods. Roz McLean is an author illustrator who has done an incredible job with representation. In this book, Together a Forest, children of all different abilities. Well, the subtitle, Drawing Connections Between Nature's Diversity and Our Own. So there are all different abilities and types of child represented, and connections made with the nature around them. And we live in Vancouver Island in the north region, so it's specifically getting into kind of that rainforest type area. It's just really, really beautiful artwork. It's a great read aloud. I would really recommend it as a great story walk as well. Getting near the end of the picture books. I think this is our last one, and it is a little bit borderline to nonfiction, but Yoga Adventures, Phil Explorers, Megan McDougall, and the illustrations by Haley Lowe, another Vancouver illustrator. So just a great movement and imagination and mindfulness. I could see this being useful in a classroom, maybe a pre-K, early childhood setting, or if you've got littles at home and you're trying to have something to do with them to keep them moving, but in a structured way so they're not destroying your house. Might be something useful to have on board. Very cute, very mimicking animals and that kind of thing to frame the concepts of the movement. Moving into nonfiction, so transition slide. We're gonna have a picture book nonfiction for a little bit younger. Hummingbird on My Balcony by Isabel Grock. She's done quite a lot of nonfiction, excellent work, and this one is targeted towards a little bit younger. So as you can see, just short, thin picture book orientation with photos. She actually documented with a bit of a frame story based on a young person who lived in an apartment on the 22nd floor of a tower, and a hummingbird that nested on his balcony. And so managed to get photos of that process and document facts about the hummingbirds in general in around the story of how that documentation with the photos through a life cycle of a hummingbird went. So great book for kids who are really into facts, good school library resource as well. I know there are some kids that are less interested in the imaginative, artistic interpretation and more into like, give me photos, give me facts, give me their perception of real things. So that might be a good one for them. Moving in a different direction, Star Sailor, Story of Words by Victoria-based Sarah Cassidy, with illustrations by Julie McLaughlin. So I really love that there is a focus on STEM, of course, but also that there's a focus on the arts and celebrating all different types of knowledge. And so this one, we're focusing on the beauty and the history of words. So let's celebrate the mystery of words, the history, how language developed, what their utility is, how they keep changing. It's a sort of very, very early introduction of linguistics concepts. It was an interesting experience for me because my university introduction to linguistics was not lovely, but this book makes it all very approachable, very fun, very appealing, and I really appreciate all the work that must have gone into making it so fun. So fantastic resource. really unique resource as well. Still in the picture book range, The Tufted Puffin of Triangle Island. This is a very BC book by the BC Dream Team of nature writer and illustrator Deborah Hodge with Karen Rixich. So Triangle Island is, of course, a nature preserve in BC for birds, and so this is giving us a deep dive into their experiences. Beautiful, as is typical of Karen's work, illustration, and a little bit of narrative. It's almost like a picture book read aloud. So just a little bit of text with information about the birds. It's not chock-a-block with facts popping in everywhere. It's more like reading a picture book about the birds straight through. It sort of gives their narrative. So it'd be a little bit on the younger end, and it is a new series starting about ecologically sensitive species and habitats. Starting in BC. Another one very much in the early picture books range. This is by Kristen Pendray and with pictures by Katie Melrose. So What Fish Are Saying, very unique concept, strange sounds in the ocean. And she picked up on quite recent research, some of it, on the underwater sounds and how they link up to fish. So again, it's very picture book oriented, just image heavy, a little bit of text. Excellent for read alouds because there's, if you can see, so many fun sound effects that you can have kids join in on or act into if that's your sort of thing. One more nonfiction, also from Kristen Pendray, When a Tree Falls, Nurse Logs and Their Incredible Forest Power. And that one is with illustrations by Elke Boschinger. I think this one's already been picking up some acclaim. Interestingly, I've been seeing a few books on nurse logs for different ages. So we're getting our BC representation for sure. Fairly narrative based. Again, more image than too many facts. So we're going sort of like a story about a nurse log. How its life cycle goes, what it does. Lots of sound effects. Very gentle, poetic storytelling. As is very typical for Kristen Pendray. I think we're getting near the end of our picture book and into some slightly older things. So this one has really done well already in the awards and acclaim section, just in case. Saving Seeds in the Svalbard Global Seed Vault by science writer Megan Clendenin and illustrated by Brittany Chiese. So we're still in the picture book genre, but we're getting into a little bit more fact pop-ins. And it's just telling the narrative of how, why this was built, what the purpose, function, benefits are. Small amount of pop-ins. This one is a sequel, Soups On Around the World by Denise Weisbuth and Chelsea O'Byrne with illustrations. So the first one was Teas On Around the World. And it's got sort of a almost poetic, very sparse narrative element that runs through, beautiful illustrations, and then little facts about each area that is being profiled. So I believe that's an ongoing series. The last one in our picture book range, this is Orange, a field trip through color, and it is getting longer. By, again, a science writer, Rachel Poliquin, with illustrations by Julie Morstead. We're still getting that narrative approach, lots of pictures. This one's a little bit longer. And it does hop through all different things that are orange all around the world. historical context, cultural context, nature, man-made. Kind of a unique take on it. Moving into some longer works, and we are going to get, I would say a lot of this is in that middle grade or middle elementary. One of our Tanya Lloyd Key, you've seen science books as well as fiction from her. This one is on feeling your feelings, the head to toe science of emotions. So it's not gigantic, it's still quite an accessible piece, but it's going to give more detail, more facts, a little bit less illustration. Illustrations by Phil Nichols. Good timing after that that latest Disney release. Microbes to the rescue, using bacteria, algae, and fungi to clean up the planet. That's by another very accomplished BC science writer, Yolanda Ridge. And really, really up to the moment. Many of these things I've just been reading about in science journals, and it gets into all of the really cool advances that are happening with microbial research. So that's a really fun one, but again, very accessible, just slim volume, kind of elementary to maybe middle school level readers, or in school libraries would be perfect. This one also is quite fun and quite unique. So I think this is our last Scott Ritchie illustrated work. We've had quite a few now. He's been really busy, I guess. The Sustainable School, A Journey Through Time and Energy, and it's graphic novel formatted. So the whole thing is done comic book style. And it's about a school in basically current time that digs up a time capsule, and then it goes through comparing. In the time capsule, they talk about all sorts of things that were considered modern innovations, I think about 100 years ago. And then they contrast that to what we think of as kind of up and coming modern innovations and projecting to the future. What do we hope for? So really interesting way of looking at science and sort of the ecological factors as well. Another Rachel Polkin. For slightly older audiences, you can see a little bit more to it, with illustrations by Clayton Hemmer. And Rachel also often has very funny, very quirky approaches to her science writing. So this one's called The Gland Factory, a tour of your body's goops, juices, and hormones. So if you contrast that to feeling your feelings, which also very cute, very child appropriate. This one is probably even more 8-year-old boy coded, I would say, or 7 or whatever, however you want to say that. There's like that extra bit of cheekiness to it. So like this page, no pee-pee hormone. I mean, there's just the way that it's positioned is very fun. There's some little characters running around with word bubbles. There's some narrative to the way that the information is being presented, but it is, of course, very well researched. Very, yeah, they've got graffiti on all over the place. Like it's very funny and very silly, but the science is good. So, edutainment. This was a very fun one for us this year. Creatively Human, Why We Imagine, Make, and Innovate by Vancouver Island author Lois Peterson, with illustrations by Madeline Yee. And again, we talk about, the value of STEM, but also it's really important to be valuing creativity in all aspects of human endeavor. And this book takes the time, makes the effort to bring many of those things together and display them in not entirely comprehensive way, but an organized and collected way. And so each spread is presenting often kids, not always, around the world, doing different things. One of the very notable ones was someone who he goes around in cityscapes, so out in the wild, so to speak, and finds gum that's been stuck places and then turns it into artwork. So he's working with not pristine materials. And there's a very funny story. If you ever meet the author, ask her to tell you her gum story. There's some background there. And there is some Canadian authors featured in this, including BC author Lee Edward Fody, who is a very creative person as well. So we love this book. We think it's an excellent thing to be featuring for kids about how we're all creative humans, and those are skills to be developed in all sorts of different areas. Continuing into multi-awarded, multi-skilled author Mark Liren Young's latest release, Octopus Ocean, Geniuses of the Deep. I think this one is also actually starting to rack up the awards. We all hopefully watched My Octopus Friend and realized that octopuses are amazing, and octopuses. Anyways, I believe this book answers that question. I clearly have forgotten what the answer was. Lots of amazing details and facts. I learned many things. It's a good read. It is it's not huge. It is pretty slim volume, but the level of detail is getting slightly more. Less illustration, more pictures, more science. This one, it could have gone into fiction. I wasn't quite sure how to classify it, but You Were Made for This World is excellent no matter where you put it. Celebrated Indigenous voices speak to young people, just kind of sums it up. There are many, that's the list of contributors on the back. So accomplished Indigenous people who have contributed writing in a variety of formats. Some are letters, some are kind of like poems or little narratives, where they're speaking very consciously to, I guess, the next generation, trying to inspire them or give them hope or pass on learnings. And then each one is accompanied by, there's sort of an organizing principle around plant medicine, and each one is accompanied by custom commissioned illustrations. So this one is by BC illustrator Carleen Harvey. And that goes with a written work by Cindy Blackstock. So every single written piece has an accompanying artwork. So really beautiful, inspiring book that kind of defies categorization. Last one in our nonfiction category, Get Dressed, historical guessing game for fashion lovers. Kind of a fun way of presenting information. It's illustration by BC illustrator Erin Vanessa and written by Kathy Canales. So it goes around the world in different historical eras, and it presents pictures and information with a bit of a twist of going, do you think this could be true? So there's a search and find element of what doesn't fit here. And then you turn the page and you learn what is correct and what definitely isn't. A bit of an information twist. Moving on to graphic novels. The section is growing in our school libraries, in our bookstores, possibly in your homes. And for BC authors, it is growing as well. So let me see if I can go in roughly age order here. We have Janet Curl's first full graphic novel, Barnacle Bay. This was definitely a birthday gift for my nephews this year. Really cute, very punny, lots of little language jokes in here, which I think is a fantastic skill builder. The humor went over really, really well for a 7-year-old, and very charming, fun artwork as well. So that's a high recommend for kind of early to middle elementary, I would say. The latest, this is book 6 in the Meg and Greg series, which is teaching phonics through step-by-step progressive readers, where the intention is that it's scaffolded a bit. So an adult can read the full text if needed, and then a developing reader can read the comic book section. And then as they progress, they'll be able to read it on their own, with the language deliberately developed so that they should be developing their skills each book and throughout the book based on phonic progression. So I've seen those used in so many schools now. They've done really, really well with them. Written, of course, by sisters, I believe twins, I'm not sure, one of whom has both dyslexia and became a teacher of language development and dyslexic students. Continuing With graphic novels, we have the latest in the Laser Moose and Rabbit Boy series, which is Spider-Mania, which I don't really like to touch because there are spiders. But this series, this also was a gift for the 7-year-old and went over really well. So the level of humor, perfect for elementary schoolers. Artwork also pretty cuddly and silly. 2 more in the graphic novel section. We have Austin Matthews is the latest in the amazing hockey stories by recently moved to BC author Lorna Schultz Nicholson. She has a ton of hockey and sports related books out. This series has several titles in it now, and if you haven't cracked them open, they are a mix of text and comic panels. So great for developing and less confident readers, which is really great for the sports section because there's sometimes some overlap there. And hockey in particular is one of the top circulating areas in our schools. So really, really smart development all around there. We're going to see another Lorna book in a minute. But first, we're going to look at Kathleen Gross's latest, Carousel Summer. It is a bit of a chunk, but as some of you may know, when you have graphic novels, you just got to spend a little more page time, and the kids really don't seem to mind. This is a great read for, I'd say, middle grade, kind of in that age 12-ish range, which is about what the main character is. It's a very summer story, just we're off school, we're kicking around, doing things, our best friend is at camp, and it's kind of a bummer, what are we going to do? But there's a few different angles to it, one of which is fighting the developers that are trying to mess with our small town. It's set on the East Coast, but Kathleen does live here. And also there's like a cool girl from the city that becomes the new best friend. There's a little bit of changing identity. The mom's out of the picture. So the dad's really struggling with, his little girl not doing girly things. And there's maybe almost a non-binary thing going on there. And then the girls do fall in love. So there's a coming out of the closet situation as well that the dad is not dealing well with. So some representation there, some very relatable summertime vibes. And I definitely think this one is going to be circulating high on the middle grade shelves in a lot of schools. Moving into novels with less or no illustration, which is a dwindling category every year. It's sad to see it getting smaller, but it is nice to see that a lot of these are adapting to where kids are at. This series in particular has done really, really well. Julia on the Go has book 2 out now, The Big Splash, and I've heard book 3 has been announced. Angela Ahn is a fantastic author. All of her books are amazing. I really love the characters and the way they relate to each other and the world. Her kids are like, they try really hard. Illustrations in this one by Julie Kim. So it's not exactly an illustrated chapter book. It's sort of an in-between book. So it's a little bit shorter than what you'd see in a full middle grade novel. I'd say it's helping kids to read up into middle grade. So if they're not up for I'm going to knock over my pile of books, hang on. If they're not up for that length of novel, it's going to be a little bit shorter, bigger text, some pictures. But it's not like early chapter book. It is like a proper length of book. Young character, early-ish elementary, middle elementary, trying to get her swim team through some fundraising challenges. So just great, fun, relatable kid stuff. I would love to see the series keep doing well. She has had a number of great books out, so look up this author if you haven't already. Angela Ahn. Team Park last year was another excellent one for slightly older kids. Another great kind of into that middle elementary range where it's a little bit thinner. We're starting to see these novels finally get shorter after agitating to publishers for ages and ages. Maggie Lou Meets Her Match is another sequel. Arnolda DeFore Bows, and we have a BC illustrator doing internal and cover illustrations. So Maggie Lou Firefox was book 1 in this. or pardon me, just the cover illustrations by Carlene Harvey. Getting into, one more on that slightly shorter range, I think. A Promise to Protect is Nikki Bergstresser's first middle grade. And so we have a character who loses her aunt. So there's this sort of grief that she's processing as she realizes that the old growth forest nearby is under threat by developments. We've had a few different developments. I think there's something in the water, or maybe in Canada, going on that she's trying to fight. And I really like the way that this story deals with that fight, because there are definitely some ups and downs. It's not easy, but the way that that's reflected in the path that the characters go through is a good model for us all to process through. So I would say some fairly approachable language as well. So that might be a good one in terms of middle elementary, or accessible for getting into very classic middle grade as well. Tanya Lloyd Key has several middle grade out now, as well as her science writing. And this is her latest release, The City of Lost Cats, where we have yet another fight the bad developer narrative, which is a great one. We're building the next generation of activists. In this case, there is a heritage house that's under threat by development that is not going through proper channels, and it is inhabited by a number of cats who have gone astray, lost their homes, and a little girl who's having some issues with her family situation, who stumbles across them. So some fun stuff going on with the different cat identities in that. It's a little bit genre punk or genre blended. Like, I wouldn't call it full fantasy because the cats don't necessarily have powers, but it is quite whimsical and quite imaginative in the cats' personalities and in the way that they express themselves. We have our second Lorna Schultz Nicholson story. So Rhapsody Smith Ice Angel, girls hockey team, just excellent representation. Need more girl sports books. And kind of a neat narrative in this one. There's excellent sports writing, of course, as we'd expect from a Lorna book. But there's also this situation where there's this older woman in the community who seems like she's not quite homeless, but she's, does she have dementia? Is she struggling? Is she borderline unhoused? And then she's assaulted. There's a theft. There's a connection to a famous World Cup ring, like a 1990 Women's World Cup ring. And so there's the kind of this mystery and this effort to help this woman. And so all of it gets resolved in a very meaningful way. And so there's quite a lot of heart to this book, and quite a lot of very interesting angles that have been worked into just a really good adventure book, I'd say. So great author, great addition, because like I said, those hockey books, those sports books, they really do circulate, and everybody's been asking for more girls' sports books in particular. Mahtab Narasimhan, excellent books from her, of course, every time. This one is in the Orca High-Low range for teens. And it's always good to see more speculative coming from those ranges. We've had a lot of issues books traditionally, and they're starting to bring out more fantasy, sci-fi, horror, which I think is a really nice move. So this one is about, as many Mahtab's books are, a story set in India. These teens they have a ghost hunter like channel, so they're influencers or aspiring influencers, and they go to a very haunted historic site where there's, princess and things went down in history supposedly, and they try to get to the bottom of it, and things go very, very wrong. So this is proper horror. I wouldn't say it's not going to traumatize anybody, but there are some good creepy thrills in this. So if you've got some less confident readers who are looking for some good horror, that's a great one for. Probably you'd be okay middle school through high school with that one, but maybe not elementary. Sticking with the teen reads, we've got another sequel here. Becky Citra has her Rachel Bird sequel set in the BC interior, which we don't get enough books, or authors for that matter, coming out of. Small town kid who's living with grandparents, there's horses. In this case, there's a wildfire narrative. So great, great BC representation for teens. And speaking of BC representation for teens, I love this book. This is a fantastic, Kieri Uegaki has her YA debut, her novel debut in Emiko. This is so fun, but she took the famous novel Emma and did like a BC Japanese teen re-envisioning of it. So I could see this being like a Netflix series special. It's incredibly fun. It's incredibly interesting from a representation point of view. Like I really wish this community just existed. It's charming. It's cute, it's romantic. I think that this one is just going to get eaten up by teen girls everywhere. So definitely check this one out. And then the last, at sort of the top end of our teen range, we have The Kindred Coast. This one is an anthology. It's short fiction. There are 13 stories. One or two of them are actually short comics. And they're all set in BC. Most of them are BC and Vancouver Island authors. I think there's one Saskatchewan, one Yukon Territory author in there. And the entire project is Canadian. So from the cover art, the editors, the publishers out of Victoria. It's third in a series of creepy anthologies for teens based in BC. So we're trying to create like a sort of a modern mythology of BC for ourselves. Really interesting project, some really, really cool stories in here, some great representation. And this is part of, several of the stories are in my my compilation of recommended works for high school classrooms as well. If you're struggling to find resources or to get through novels, this is a really high recommend. So overall, not that chunky, pretty small, and then the stories within it, some of them are quite short as well. So high recommend. I wouldn't say anything in it is excessively terrifying. Certainly it was written for teens. Many of the protagonists in the stories are teens up to about 22. So definitely written for that age demographic. That is everything that I was able to get my hands on. There are a few titles that we missed either because they weren't out or they weren't processed through the local library. They were unable to get a hold of. So do check the resources in the notes. Thank you for being with me. That was my speed run, and we're just about up to an hour, so I'm so sorry for the length. But the resources do have some quick access as well.